Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Studio 118. I'm Reuben. Next to me is Bunjee. Say hi, Bunjee.
Hey, Bunjee.
And that was good. Good start. Well, we're broadcasting live, as always, from Calvary South Austin here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining us. You're probably watching us on YouTube or on Austin Cable Access Channel 11. We know there's at least one of you out there. And we have our live chat going, as we do always, and we encourage you to jump on there, say hi. But also, we do have a Q&A session after our discussion, and we'd love to take your questions. So if you got a question for us about tonight's topic, it's a good one, another good one, drop your question there, and we will queue it up, and we'll have them ready to discuss after our discussion. So you can either go jump on the live chat on YouTube, or if you're watching on Channel 11, feel free to call in your question. That number is 512-576-5433. Again, 512-576-5433. And as I mentioned, we're broadcasting here at Calvary South Austin. This is our church, and we invite you to join us. If you don't have a church, or if you're looking for a church to attend, come and join us. We meet on Sunday mornings at 9:15 and 11:15 a.m., as well as Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. If you want some more information about our church and who we are, we encourage you to jump online. You can go to calvarysouthaustin.com. Or you can, again, call the church, 512-576-5433. Or you can also email the church, info@calvarysouthaustin.com. So a lot of ways to connect with us. But for tonight, we're just glad you made it. It's another good discussion. You see, last month, we talked about the flat earth theory. And this month, with leading up to the Christmas holidays, we're going to talk about the greatest story ever stolen, ? Now, what do we mean by that, right? Well, you see, there is a theory out there that has kind of gained a foothold, maybe on the fringes still, but I hear it enough every year that it lets me know that it's still alive and going. But this idea that the story of Jesus and the person of Jesus is not actually rooted in history, right, but rather it was stolen or borrowed, if you want to be charitable, borrowed from ancient pagan mystery religions.
Right.
Ooh, right?
It's a mystery.
It is a mystery. And so it's really just, the story of Jesus and the miracles he did and the birth story and whatnot, even the resurrection and his death. These are all really just a retelling and an evolution of ancient beliefs and practices that have been going on for millennia, right?
So if I understand this correctly, and I think I do,
we'll see.
Time will tell. But the idea then is that everything that we see in the story of Jesus Christ is just a retelling and rebranding of religious beliefs that were embraced in other pagan religions prior to the first century.
Yes. You got it. Good job, man. Good job. Yeah, and these, so I remember I became a Christian 2008, somewhere in there, 2006. That's what it was. And soon after that, when I got into apologetics, just looking for and investigating answers for the Christian faith. And I inevitably came across this documentary. It was called Zeitgeist, right?
Zeitgeist says,
or
some might say.
Zeitgeist, the movie. And, it's a movie that came out in 2007. And I didn't come across it probably till post 2010.
Yeah.
But it threw me for a loop a little bit. And then also when I started investigating a little further, I say, oh, wow, there's a lot of people on the internet talking about this, and they really are taking this a little seriously. So what's going on here? Yeah. But, this Zeitgeist, the movie, and there's actually 3 of them out right now, and there's actually a 4th coming in mid-2022 if you go to zeitgeistmovie.com. Fun little website. But anyways, this first installment of Zeitgeist series, it was actually broken up into 3 parts, right? So the second part, so the first part is about this ancient mystery religion stuff, but I'll tell you, at least the second part was about 9/11 and how it was basically a government conspiracy and whatnot. And so again, this came out in 2007. So that's around the time when all this stuff would have still been, being talked about. And then the third part is about, our central banking system and how there's really just a small group of elites that, kind of rule this and what they're trying to do with it and all that kind of stuff.
The Bilderbergers.
Yeah, those guys.
Delicious.
But it's the first part. It's really just right out the gate. They start off with this section about the greatest story ever told. Yeah. And here they're really just trying to say the greatest story ever stolen, because they make the connections between these pagan ancient mystery religions and trying to tie it into, hey, Christianity is just another one of those. And because it's later in the game, Christianity, they're the ones that stole it or borrowed it from these other religions, right? So everything that if you're a Christian, everything that you've grown up to believe about the Bible, about Jesus specifically and all his story, is false. It really is just based upon, religious beliefs and supernatural and things about the stars and the sky and that kind of stuff. So it really threw me for a loop. I remember, and I was like, man, I really got to figure this out, and went in to look into it. And, lo and behold, it's easily debunked. So that's hopefully what we'll show.
And when you say it threw you for a loop, I just want to kind of understand, like, did it make you question your faith, or, was it more like, I need to bone up on these arguments,
It didn't make me question my faith, because, there's things that right? And I know, right? What I mean threw me for a loop is, if you watch, our audience, if you watch this movie, it's put together in such a way that it seems compelling, right? A good movie will do that. It kind of ropes you in a little bit. If they have good script, and then combined with good illustrations, and they tie it all together, and everything just works well. And also, it's a lot of information. Right. And especially if it's the first time hearing this kind of information, I would say that's what I mean. It threw me for a loop, that, oh, wow, this is brand new stuff that I've never even heard of. And it seems like there's nuggets of truth in there that, what if? So it leaves you at least asking that question, what if there's some truth here? Right. So that's what I mean by threw me for a loop. Yeah. And, I will say that, even to this day, right, like I say, every single year I see these claims popping up. And granted, they may be just kind of relegated to internet forums. I know there's this popular atheist forum called infidels.org, self-claimed infidels, and they throw out this reasoning, and they truly believe in it, right? Right. And so there's this, maybe it's just relegated again, like I said, to the internet forums, and so it might be on the fringe. But there's enough people that scream loudly about it that maybe it can kind of slowly spread from there. So that's my concern, at least.
Yeah, there's no true scholarship buying into this stuff.
Yeah. And I guess I will say there's at least one person that I know of who is a true scholar, by the name of Richard Carrier. And he's a historian, and he's, I guess, well known for, he's put his name out there as one who believes in this, what's called Jesus mythicism. Right. And we've talked about this before, like, did Jesus exist, essentially? And he's kind of like a really well-known young dude, and he's a well-known proponent of this Jesus mythicist theory, the idea that Jesus didn't exist, but then they take it further and say, not only didn't he exist, but we can kind of connect the dots and see that he's actually borrowed from these ancient pagan mystery religions. So,
I would have to question, what kind of scholar he is then, not to just completely question his credentials, but even Bart Ehrman, who's no friend of the Christian faith, just flat out dismisses this connection. But I guess we'll consider more about that as we
Oh yeah. Bart Ehrman, he wrote a book about it. Did Jesus exist?
Yeah.
Because he was so bothered by this. And so I will say Richard Carrier is like one of, thousands of historians, right? And he's a historian of ancient literature and classics, and so that kind of just lends more credibility, right? Now, I obviously I disagree with him, and Bart Ehrman has his reasons and very good reasons, I think. But again, yeah, I would say this theory is definitely on the fringe. Not many people buy into it, but there's just kind of like this underground, fringe type person that will believe this.
Right.
And every now and then you might come across this person, and you'll have to see if you know what they're talking about.
What about Bill Maher?
Yes, you're talking about his documentary. How do you pronounce that one?
We're talking top level stuff here, but Religulous.
Yes.
Which came out I guess a year after Zeitgeist.
2008. Yep. There you go.
And so Bill Maher basically just repeats the stuff that Zeitgeist has in that little 25-minute documentary. But then Bill Maher is a very clever man and has a very powerful way of using comedy to make his point. So he actually goes to Israel and stands in front of the tomb with someone dressed like Jesus. Yeah. And begins to drill him with, all of these data points of, well, what about Mithra, and what about Osiris, and what about, talks about the virgin birth, talks about the, December 25th, and just rattles off point after point after point, just data point after data point of all these connections that just prove. And then the character dressed like Jesus is standing there just like, really?
I'm supposed to represent all of Christianity right now. What do I say?
And it's all taking place in front of, what is a traditional site for the tomb of Christ. Right?
It could be a powerful message. I see that.
It was like, wow, that's, I could see how easily someone that is a fan of Bill Maher already would just completely embrace this nonsense.
I think I was telling you earlier, right? I want to say, and I'll just put it out there. I haven't verified this, but I want to say Joe Rogan, when he has the most popular podcast, as we all hear right now on Spotify. But I want to say there's like a clip of him going on a rant, maybe several of them, but against Christianity. And I want to say he's kind of in line with, down the same vein, same line of thinking about this mythicism type of belief. So I'll have to verify that. If anybody can verify that or knows off the top, maybe jump on the live chat and let us know. But that goes to another point, just staying on this little side trail that we're going on here. Imagine you're that guy in that Jesus costume there, and you're just like, man, all I know is I have a relationship with God, and you're over here throwing questions at me that I'm not prepared for. But and maybe, hopefully, that stands as a wake-up call, and that's what we try to do here with this video, these episodes that we're doing here in Studio 118, is that we want to expose our audience to these types of topics because they're out there, and inevitably you're going to meet somebody who's talking these kinds of beliefs, and are you going to be prepared? And I forgot to mention at the outset of the show, Studio 118 stems from Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. Come, let us reason. And then also 1 Peter 3:15, always be ready to give a defense for the reason for the hope that is in you. Now, imagine if that person dressed up as Jesus were prepared and say, well, I know those, and really they have no correspondence with reality, right? And he can give his data points right back at him. But unfortunately, I believe that, many Christians today at least do not cultivate that life of the mind, right? And granted, this is a fringe belief, but, for what it's worth, maybe it's worth at least being surface level familiar with these beliefs. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So hopefully we'll do it justice, and it'll be a fruitful discussion.
I agree. I think the scriptures are perfectly clear that we're to study to show ourselves approved, which begins with rightly dividing or cutting straight the word of God. And so, we should know what the scriptures say so that, we're not thrown for a loop when we hear something that's in conflict, with the scriptures. But then beyond knowing what the Bible actually says, we should also bone up on some of these, arguments, especially, as we see them gaining popularity, as we see them taking root, even now in some level of scholarship, which is pretty scary. But yeah, so the call for Christians to have a ready defense, or the word that Peter used was an apologia, which is where we get our word apologetics. That defense, which then can be presented gently and lovingly, because when you're taken back by an argument and you're flustered by it, you don't know how to defend your point or your belief system. That's typically when we get argumentative. That's typically when we get a little frustrated in our defense of the Christian faith. That's, we should be ready. We should be ready so that we can be gentle, we can be kind in our response, we can be well thought out, and we can be reasonable as the Scriptures call us to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we talked about this before, but there's, especially when we're talking about the reliability of the Bible, right? Where we threw out that quote, "It's an embarrassment of riches," at least when it comes to the reliability of the New Testament. But I would say, if God exists, which we believe He does, then truth, everything that is true, everything that is taught in the Bible is going to correspond with reality. Yeah. And so we don't have to be afraid that, what if there's a conflict, and what about this supposed contradiction, that kind of stuff. It's like, number one, and we're going to talk about this a little later about what the nature of the Bible is, but, as it presents itself as a true story. And so we can go and look for the evidence, and we will eventually find these pieces of evidence.
And when you say that there's an embarrassment of riches, what I hear you say is that, there is so much manuscript evidence, there's so much empirical data, there's so much archaeology to support it, there's so much that supports the Christian faith that we don't have to be embarrassed by our Christian faith, because the evidence totally supports the Scriptures, the reliability of the Scriptures, as well as the support of archaeology that backs up the people, places, and things.
Yeah, not only do you have to not be embarrassed, but I think it will strengthen your faith when you see, oh wow, this is how well grounded my faith is in reality. Yes. It's not the faith that skeptics talked about, where it's a blind leap in the dark, and so they say you believe it on faith. Well, what they're really trying to say is you believe it despite the evidence. Right. I think it's that Mark Twain quote, "Faith is believing what you know ain't so," And that's what their view of faith is. But when you look at faith in the Bible and Scripture, it is based on evidence. It's a trust that is based on evidence, and it only serves to strengthen my faith, and I know it serves to strengthen yours. So,
yeah, it just reminds me of one apologist who uses maps to basically remind us that the M in maps is manuscript evidence, the A is archaeology, the P is prophecy, and then the S is science. And so those are all areas that support the Christian faith, and we don't have to fear any of that, because every time we dig deeper into these areas, what we find is just more and more support for the Christian faith. So,
yeah. So you brought up prophecy. So last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, never mind. If you get it, let us know in the live chat. He's just shaking his head at me. Anyways, last Christmas, we discussed prophecies, Christmas prophecies specifically, right? So the virgin birth, and then Isaiah chapter 9, about the titles of Jesus and what he's going to be known as, and then the New Testament, the story of his birth and whatnot, and how it fulfills prophecy. So for those of you out there in YouTube land, check out our Studio 118 YouTube channel, and you can check out that discussion from last Christmas, and I think you'll be thoroughly impressed there. We talked about prophecies, but today, like we said, we're going to talk about this greatest story ever stolen, and kind of centered around Zeitgeist, the movie. And why don't we jump into it and just kind of set the stage as to, okay, we got Christmas coming up. We're talking about Zeitgeist and ancient pagan mystery religions, but how is exactly this about Christmas? I thought this was supposed to be about gifts and happiness and reindeer.
And swaddling clothes.
Yes.
and little drummer boys.
Yes. Who have no gifts. He came unprepared.
Like he could have given his drum.
Yeah.
But then he wouldn't be the little drummer boy now.
He could have found a better rhythm also, not rup-a-pum-pum. I mean, how long have you been practicing that, really?
Yeah.
Anyways, work on your triplets, little girls and boys.
Wow, you're talking rudiments here.
Yeah. And your paradiddles. Cool. So, yeah, let's tie this into the Christmas story. What are they trying to extract here, right? Zeitgeist specifically. You want to kick it off?
Well, one of the things that you see in these arguments found in Zeitgeist and Religulous and the books that are we've seen many books being created to support this argument, but one of the claims that they make, and just to give the larger argument, if you will, the concept is that the story of Jesus Christ, with all of its details, have been plagiarized and have been pulled from the ancient pagan religions, right? And so this includes beginning with the date, the alleged date of Jesus' birth, right? So they point out that December 25th is not just the birth of Jesus, but this has been plagiarized from the mystery religions. And so, for example, they're quick to point out that in Egyptian mythology, they have the god Horus, who is the sky god, who is allegedly born on December the 25th.
He looks pretty epic right there.
He's
this falcon head.
I'd call him Hawkeye.
His 22-inch biceps. Look at that guy.
But that's just
Hawk guy. Yeah.
Hawk guy. Then in Greek mythology, Dionysus, who is
say it again.
Dionysus. So this is the god of wine. He also
look at this guy. He looks like Nick Nolte after a.
It looks like he's
after a
trying
bad
to
night.
figure out where his grapes went. I had some grapes.
I swear I left them in this chalice.
Where did they go?
Oh, they're in my left hand.
I'm
There.
drunk.
Yeah.
So yeah, this Dionysus, the god of wine, was allegedly born. You guessed it, December the 25th. Yeah. There's in Phrygian mythology, is it Attis or Ati? Attis? I don't know. I'm not Phrygian.
Yeah.
But I do have. Never mind.
Yeah.
So many refrigerator jokes.
Yes.
But so the god of vegetation, which makes sense because you want to keep your veggies in the fridge.
Yeah.
But so this Attis is allegedly born. Guess.
December 25th.
You nailed it.
Got it.
Then in Persian mythology, you have Mithra, and which it was the. Wasn't Mithra the middle sister on
Brady Bunch?
Brady Bunch?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. That's exactly right.
So Mithra is believed to be the god of the sun, also born on December 25th. Mm-hmm. So, you hear this, you watch Zeitgeist for the first time, or you watch Religulous, or you read one of these books, or you read Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, which also includes this information, right? And you're shocked to discover that, Jesus, who we celebrate the birth of Jesus on the 25th, right? There's a connection here. Here's these ancient, pagan deities who are allegedly born on this same day, and so they freak out, and they think, oh no, there's, like when you were thrown for a loop, it was just kind of like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is Jesus' birth on December 25th, and so are all these guys?
Yeah.
Well, it's important to understand that, these are nature religions.
Yes.
Right? So they're kind of rooted in, this is the god of the sky, this is the god of the earth, this is the god
everything,
of the Right. So you have all these gods over various aspects of nature, right?
Yes.
So you have to assume then that there's going to be these celebrations and observations that correspond with the different major events of the stars, and
Yeah.
So, for example, December 25th is the winter solstice. So, of course, they're going to have a god that has a birthday that corresponds with the winter solstice, in the same way that they're going to have one with the spring equinox, and so on and so forth. So, it's not surprising to find these pagan religions, these nature religions, having these nature deities that have birthdays on December 25th. And then on top of that, we have to turn around and say, well, when is Jesus' birthday, biblically speaking?
Yeah.
Have you found that yet?
I think it's somewhere in the New Testament, December 25th, though, but I know I've seen it in there. Not kidding.
It's in First Opinions.
Yeah, I think that's where it was. It fell out of my Bible some time ago. I can't find it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, nowhere in the Bible do
Right.
we find a birth date for Jesus Christ.
Right.
And then on top of that, what we do find are shepherds tending sheep in the field.
There's clues. There's not a date, but
Right.
there's surrounding circumstantial information that
Yes.
you can give a guess.
Yeah. So, if you have shepherds in the field, watching sheep, when the angels show up and start, doing their best glee performance,
Yeah.
of, the birth of the Savior, and informing the shepherds to go find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes and whatnot, you're probably not in December at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
Chances are, if it's December the 25th, you've got your sheep in the pen, not Mary and Joseph.
Yeah, and my understanding is that kind of like the first reference to December 25th within Christianity is around 300 AD. So it's not even, it's 250 years later.
You mean around the time Constantine took control of the church?
Yeah, a little bit before, I think, but yeah, it was around there that they kind of started talking more and more about, hey, let's find a date here, right? So yeah, that's biblically speaking. You bring up a good point. Is okay if they're trying to make a connection between these ancient pagan mystery religions and Christianity, stick to the source material, not beliefs that came 250 years later at least, right? So that's a very good point. And I will say this, again, if you watch the Zeitgeist movie, when they're presenting this information, it's right at the very beginning of this greatest story ever told part. And the way they present it, again, it's kind of like, it's very slippery because they just kind of rattle it off back to back.
Yep.
Here's Horus, and he was born on December 25th, blah, 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 blah. Here's Attis, blah, 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 blah. And they just kind of rapid fire these facts, as it were, right?
And if I remember correctly, don't they call Horus the sun god?
Yes.
But that's really raw.
Yes, it is, yeah.
But I think we're going to talk about that in a little while, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
But so it's just word to the wise, anytime anybody tries to steamroll you with information, don't feel pressured at that moment to concede anything. You should always have a healthy skepticism, especially when hearing new information, and just say, I'm gonna think about that. I'm gonna chew on this for a little bit and go see if it's actually. I'm gonna go verify. But I think it's intentional that right at the outset they just kind of rattle it off, and even the intonation that he uses, it's almost just matter of fact, like just very casual. Hey, he's born on December 25th. Like these are all common. And then we get to Jesus, and same story. You've heard this before. And so it's just a little bit of a psychological game being played here.
Bill Maher does the exact same thing in Religulous, which is just data point, data point, data point, data point, no source material.
Yes.
No references.
Yeah.
It's just, you should accept what I'm saying as fact, and not look into it at all.
Yes.
Because the people who actually slow it all down and look for the supporting data or the supporting sources, you're going to be hard pressed to find that information.
Yes.
And a lot of it is found after the fact.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that though.
Yeah. Well, and I will say to Zeitgeist creators' credit, if you go on their website, they do have a link that is called, I think it's called source material. And they essentially lay out everything for you. Hey, this is what we used to back up our claims. But like, as you said, it doesn't line up with reality. So, yeah.
So yeah, the Christian who, comes across Zeitgeist or religious or reads Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code or any other pop level, information that presents this parallel between the birth of Jesus Christ and these, nature deities that are allegedly born on December the 25th. There is really no connection here, because nowhere in the Bible is there a birth date for the Lord Jesus Christ. And we would probably be led to believe that Jesus was born at some other point in time, in some other month at least. And probably a fall or spring month, not dead winter.
Yes.
In the middle of winter, that doesn't make any sense at all. As we consider the shepherds out in the field.
And can I mention just one more thing about you? So you mentioned winter solstice, and I did want to mention at least winter solstice falls before Christmas, so before the 25th. So it typically is December 21st, and this is on anybody's calendar. It's between the 21st and 23rd. So if you go look at your calendar, wherever it is, it will say when the winter solstice is, when the shortest day of the year is, and then after that the days start getting longer. But it doesn't fall on the 25th. And so again, if you kind of just trust what this movie is throwing at you, and you just if somebody never bothers to go and just look at a calendar, you'll just easily buy into this. So just want to throw that out there.
Well, so then they also wrap into all of this the virgin birth. So not only are they trying to draw this parallel between Jesus and the plagiarization of these former deities who share the same birth date, allegedly, they also say that, all these guys were also born of virgin birth. That Jesus, the concept of the virgin birth of Jesus Christ is not unique to Jesus, but it's something that you find in all of these pagan religions. Right? So
at least here they're closer, because the virgin birth is found in the Bible.
It is, yes. The virgin birth is definitely found in the Bible, whereas December 25th is not. Jesus was born. So the birth of Jesus is legit, but despite what Carrier says.
Yes.
But yeah. So the virgin birth of Jesus is legitimate. I mean, we find prophecies about the virgin birth in Genesis chapter 3. We find prophecies about the virgin birth, throughout the Old Testament.
Isaiah 7, that's the one.
Yep, Isaiah. And then some will come along and say, that could mean young girl. Of course, I mean, of course that word could also mean that as well. But what kind of sign is that a young girl gives birth?
Yeah.
And that's what the Lord shows through Isaiah, is that there's going to be this sign, this extraordinary, unusual event where this young girl gives birth to a baby, or this virgin gives birth to a baby. And then when we go back to Genesis chapter 3 and see it's the seed of the woman, that produces this supernatural son, then there's good reason to believe that the word should be translated virgin, not young girl. But then, these Zeitgeist people and the Bill Maher's of the world and these guys want to come along and say, that's not unique. This is something that was plagiarized and rebranded in Christianity. It was taken, though, from, they claim that Horus was born of a virgin. They claim, that Dionysus was born of a virgin. They claim that Atis was born of a virgin. They claim that Mithra was born of a virgin. They claim that Krishna was born of a virgin. Krishna.
How'd he get there?
Yeah, he's in the mix.
Interesting.
So the problem, though, is that when you start analyzing the stories.
Yeah, are we gonna do this?
Oh, we're doing this.
All right.
This
should I put a disclaimer here?
That it's about to get
yes.
TV 17 here.
Yes, Studio 118 is now officially Studio 118 After Dark. So we're gonna share some of these stories about these ancient pagan mystery gods and goddesses.
We've blurred the images.
Yeah, we've blurred the images, but we're going to give verbal descriptions about what the actual source material for these gods and goddesses and what their birth stories actually are. And some of them, if not all of them, are pretty graphic. So if you got some young ones around you, you might want to go tell them, go play with their Legos or something. and or cover their ears. Do your best. But here we go.
And away
we go. Merry Christmas, by the way.
So, according to the mythology, Horus was not born of a virgin. So Isis procreated with Osiris after reassembling his body parts, which were torn apart and scattered all over Egypt, right?
Yeah.
We all know the story.
Yeah. I tell it to my kids every year. Yeah?
So there's an Egyptologist and professor at the University of Arizona. His name is Dr. Richard Wilkinson. He informs us of this, and I quote him, through her magic, Isis revivified the sexual member of Osiris and became pregnant by him, eventually giving birth to their child, Horus.
But she's virgin.
Doesn't sound like a virgin birth to me.
I mean, if you kind of redefine things and...
I guess, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a historian and a professor named Francois. Francois, is that what that is?
There you go. You're French.
I
Come
have
on.
no idea. Yeah, that's okay. Francois. So he writes this: after having sexual intercourse in the form of a bird.
All right.
With the dead god she restored to life, she gave birth to a posthumous son of Horus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good old Francois.
Yeah. Watch your mouth, Francois. What's going on here? Well,
so much for Horus.
Yes.
Being born of a virgin.
No special birth here. Well, I mean, some special parts about it, but it's not a virgin birth.
It would definitely be a movie I wouldn't watch.
Yeah. Imagine a kid waking up Christmas morning and going to find, instead of a nativity set, a recreation of this. This is god-awful.
Yeah, don't get me started on Nimrod.
Here we go.
Yeah. So then they claim that Dionysus was born of a virgin, right?
Yeah.
And, so the fact is, though, that Dionysus was not born of a virgin mother. The most common story is that Dionysus was born from the procreated population of Zeus and his mother. How do you pronounce that?
Semele, probably.
Yeah. I probably did a better job with that than Francois.
Yes. This is a good game of how many euphemisms can we come up with?
Yeah, so
we do it for you, audience. We're trying our best.
So then the argument of these, Zeitgeistian people, that Dionysus was born of a virgin.
Yeah.
Where's your source material?
So these are, again, this is source material that we're talking about. The historians that have actually gone and found the ancient relics and hymns and stories about these gods and goddesses, and they've done the hard work of translating, and they've found how it has evolved throughout history, and it's kind of the same story, and they all involve sexual intercourse. There's no virgins involved whatsoever.
Yeah, for example, they claim that Attis was born of a virgin, but according to the ancient mythology, there's several versions of the story. So, we could spend the next 30 minutes just looking at the various stories that are told about how he was born. Mm-hmm. But just to pull one out, Attis was born by Nana, impregnated by an almond fallen from a tree that was germinated from the severed genitals of Agdistes.
Wow, not Nana.
So,
wow.
Agdistes apparently became a eunuch.
Yes.
But his severed genitals became an almond tree.
Life of their own, yeah.
And then an almond. Some may have been used to make almond milk. We don't know.
Yeah.
But then one of these almonds that fell from the tree impregnated Nana, and from that Attis was born.
Yeah.
So strange.
Yep.
But there's definitely some level of procreation happening here.
Oh yeah, some level. Yep, no virgin involved here, and I never trust the nut milks.
And I'm swearing off almond flour from here on out. Lest I too become pregnant. We don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know anymore.
2021, man, anything can happen.
So what about Mithra?
Ah, yes, Mithra.
Have you heard the argument that Mithra was born of a virgin?
Yep.
So that was in the Zeitgeist movie.
I remember that. Yep.
The fact is that Mithra was not born in a literal sense. They say that he emerged out of a rock.
Well, I mean, the rock, technically.
But there's no virgin.
Right.
There's, unless it was a virgin rock. We don't know for certain.
Yeah.
But Mithra then also emerged out of the rock as an adult, not as a baby. Interesting story.
Yeah.
But Mithra has no real mother, no virgin birth. There's no manger. It's just he emerged from a rock, which is different from heavy metal.
Yeah. Yes. Nice. Yeah, and this is the pattern that I remember when I started looking into this, is that once you look at the source material, it's like so many assumptions have to be made and redefinitions that you're really straining language and beliefs in order to try to get these beliefs to kind of get in the same vicinity as one another and be like, there's a connection.
Yep.
It really is doing a disservice to history here.
You're a little surprised by Krishna being on the list.
Yeah, what's up with Krishna?
The guy that, didn't the Beatles sing about him?
Yeah, well, Hare Krishna. I remember that.
So, good old Harry. They claim that he's born of a virgin, and yet according to the mythology, Krishna was born of the virgin Devaki.
Devaki,
That's how you pronounce this.
Yeah.
And yet, it should be noted that Krishna was actually the 8th son of Devaki and Vasudeva.
Yes, the 8th, huh?
The 8th son.
Okay. All right. Well.
Now, I'm not up to date with all of the new woke trends and terms.
Look at that big family right there.
That's a large family, and
it's Krishna, the blue one,
and the Virgin Mother there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and risk offending those of the woker persuasion.
Okay.
But if you've given birth to 7 kids already,
yeah,
then the chances are you're probably not a virgin when you give birth to the 8th.
I mean, what are the chances here? So you're telling me there's a chance? Well, as they say, every child is a miracle.
True.
Right?
True. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But not in the same way that Jesus.
Not a virgin, yeah. Definitely
not. In the same way that Jesus was a miracle. So again, as they rattle off these data points in Religulous and Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code and Zeitgeist or Zeitgeist, as some might pronounce it.
Yep.
I'm having a hard time finding where their data points are actually supported by actual facts.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I mean, all these deities that we're mentioning, there's really no evidence that they ever existed anyway, right? But
of course, yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, my understanding is that there's always. What they are correct in saying is the Zeitgeist. If you go look at the movie, it starts off by telling you that, since forever ago, ancient cultures have always tried to anthropomorphize nature and deify those elements, right? And so they come up with these stories about how to explain the natural phenomena. So the crop cycle every year and the days getting shorter and longer, the solstices, right? And also the constellations. So you have these ancient Eastern and Middle Eastern religions that they did a lot of heavy lifting, and especially Egyptians, about categorizing and documenting the movements of the stars and the way they're grouped together. And that's where you have constellations and also this understanding of the zodiac, the main constellations that supposedly give us signs about epochs and eons and whatnot. And so they did all that heavy lifting, but with their assumption that, these are gods and goddesses kind of pulling strings and intervening, and they're having constant battles every time the sun goes down and the sun rises. They're really just perhaps trying to carry on a story to the next generation in order to help the next generation understand the world around them, right?
Yeah.
But then, again, when you compare that to what the Bible is actually telling us, it's vastly different. And we'll get into more of that a little later. But
Well, speaking of the stars,
yeah,
there is a belief amongst the Zeitgeistians
yes,
that
we've officially dubbed them. Yeah,
yes. So there's a belief that some of these pagan deities, their birth was it corresponded with a sign of a star in the east, and then some, like Horus, it's believed that then the star led three kings to come and worship, right, and then that is where the Matthew account of the star in the east, led the three kings, so to speak. Though
yes,
in Matthew's account, they're magi and astrologers, not kings.
yes.
Right? But so the birth of Horus, Mithra, and Krishna is believed to have been signified by a star in the east, and then allegedly three kings were brought by that star to their newborn savior Horus. And that's presented as just, this is a fact that, that occurred, and therefore the story of the Christians took this information and, poured it into, their own account of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is that, there's different ideas about this star from the east. There, in Matthew's account, as we consider the way that this star brought these magi, and we don't even know how many magi there was. Matthew doesn't tell us, how many there were. We just know that there were the three gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But as we consider this star from the east, very interesting. Very miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
They're tracing and tracking a star that they're not familiar with, and yet they're they're astronomers.
And it must have stayed in the sky for some time for them to make the long distance journey, right?
Yeah. And it disappears at one point and then comes back at another point in the story. Very interesting things, and there's some ideas. There's a documentary out there called Star of Bethlehem that a guy, makes the argument that it's actually a conjunction of a few stars. Regulus, I think, and I forget exactly all the details of it, but
I want to say we talked about this the last episode, last Christmas.
Did.
We touched on it, I think.
Sure, yeah, that's probably true. So we can't say for certain what the star in the east was and how these magi knew to track this specific star and all of that business. But there's no reason to believe that Christians stole all of this from a previous pagan religious belief system. Yeah, there's absolutely no data, no source,
right,
that would lead us to think that they plagiarized and they completely ripped this off.
Yeah, again, for these types of events, like a star appearing in the sky, or even these like constellations that they're following, I mean, consider the connection here. You're talking about ancient pagan religions that are looking at patterns that occur on a yearly basis, or even however many years, let's say 50 for some of these, special lights in the sky. But they occur periodically, over and over. They repeat themselves. And then you want to make that connection and say that Christianity somehow borrowed it, but then changed all the meaning and significance behind it, and really is just trying to describe a one-time event. They're not trying to describe anything about nature. It really is trying to fit it in a biography. So that never really sat well with me. Right away, my skepticism kicks in. It's just like, I don't know about that. But it's true that, again, you're just trying to really strain these connections. Now, what is interesting, I think we mentioned about the three magi, is that there's a theory there that these guys were probably Zoroastrians, and they probably came from the east, from Babylon territory. And that's where, a lot of these ancient pagan mystery religions were probably in effect at that time.
They are.
That's them, yeah.
Gaspar.
Yeah.
I forget
I was going to say Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria.
No, that's
my bad.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
Also stolen from the pagans.
Also,
From Native Americans.
yeah. But yeah, they would have been Zoroastrian, and they would have had that knowledge. And again, we read in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, that whole story about how the Israelites were in captivity under Babylon. So there might have been some influence there, the Hebrews upon in Babylon and in that culture, and they might have mixed there somewhere. And whenever they were freed, some of that influence might have stayed.
Well, the prophet Daniel became the head over the Magi there in
that's right.
the Babylonian kingdom, and also wrote the book of Daniel there in Babylon. So the wise men would have had access to Daniel's writings. And in Daniel chapter 9, you actually have Daniel's account of the angel coming and giving him a very specific prophecy, about the time period when the Messiah would arrive.
Ah, yes.
And you have from the going forth of the decree that is found in Daniel chapter 9, you see the angel pointing to a specific decree, which we know now was given by King Artaxerxes. And from that decree, you could calculate a specific amount of time until the arrival of the Messiah. Mm-hmm. And so it's rumored that it's definitely a possibility that the Magi there in the East continued to study Daniel's book, arrived at the conclusion after seeing the decree of King Artaxerxes that the Hebrews were allowed to return to the land of promise and rebuild their temple, and that was the indicator, that was the start point for the countdown. And it's possible that they kept track of that and then started looking for any signs that would guide them to the Messiah. And that's when, maybe God put together a supernatural, whether it's a conjunction of stars or, a supernatural star altogether.
Yep.
Either way, God seems to have blessed, their research and guided them straight to Jerusalem and then furthermore to Bethlehem.
What a bunch of wise guys, huh?
Bunch of wise guys.
I bet you one of them was named Joe Pesci.
I don't think so.
Or Ray Liotta? No? None of those guys?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I forget.
So yeah, this idea about the star being followed by the three kings and whatnot, and again, they get that terminology incorrect, the three kings and blah, blah, blah. And so even aside from this, there's mentions of each of these gods and goddesses having 12 disciples, right, followers, dying on a cross, being dead for 3 days, then resurrecting.
Yep, turning water into wine.
Yes.
They said that Krishna was the son of a carpenter.
Becoming a teacher at 12 years old, or having followers at 12 years old.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, there's this long list for each of these people that, again, I think I mentioned it even with the flat earth thing last year. It's when your theory tries to prove too much, that's when I have a hard time believing it.
Yeah.
Right? It's just trying to prove everything, and it's just over promises.
Yeah.
Right? It has to explain everything from Christianity.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, come on.
So kind of like the vaccines. As soon as you promise way too much, it's just like, no, you're pushing it too hard here.
Yeah. Gosh, we'll save that for next month.
Dude,
we'll see what kind of numbers Omicron does, man.
Yeah.
But
don't mess around.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to stick on this. Looking to the stars theme. But first of all, let me take a break. Let me address our audience here.
I thought you were going to run to the restroom.
Yeah, I gotta go, guys.
I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. I can't drink that. That's the one that makes me go. Anyways, why did I mention that on live TV? Anyways, audience, thank you for sticking with us. We're talking about Zeitgeist, and is Jesus' story the greatest story ever stolen? Was his story borrowed from ancient pagan mystery religions? If you're tuning in on YouTube, jump on that live chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Say hi. But also, again, we have a Q&A portion after our discussion. We'd love to hear from you. Queue up your questions. Anything related to what we've been talking about so far about ancient pagan mystery religions and connections between that and Jesus or Christianity. We'd love to see what you guys got. If you're tuning in on Austin Cable Access Channel 11, give us a call with your question. Call that number 512-576-5433, and somebody on the phone will queue up your question. So again, we're here at Calvary South Austin, and we'd love to see you here. We have services on Sunday mornings at 9:15 and 11:15, and on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. All right. Well, with that little intermission out of the way, so we were going to jump. I wanted to kind of stick with that talk about stars in the sky and those signs that people would have been following.
Is this what you call astrotheology?
It is. Yeah. It's a new term that I just coined, and I think it's really going to catch.
I like it.
Astrotheology. No, this is it is the term, but this is a term that was invented within Zeitgeist movie, and so and this is the way it works. So astro, pointing us to the sky, to the stars, and whatnot. And here is, at least from the director's notes on Zeitgeist. So again, you can go on their website, zeitgeistmovie.com, and there's a link for their director's notes that has basically all their claims, and they try to back up their claims in this PDF here. And here's a quote about this term astrotheology. So they found that the sun, the stars, and the general stellar array have been a powerful source of allegorical and hence mythological meaning since the dawn of humanity.
I think you mispronounced every word.
Yes, maybe just one. The term to describe this is astrotheology. So they are just melding theology, the study of God, with astro. So they're combining that the stars and the stellar array and whatnot have such an influence on how these pagan mystery religions, how they came to have their beliefs about God, and they melded the two. So it was astrotheology. So they were practicing astrotheology before it was even cool.
I knew General Stellar Array in East Texas. He was pretty cool.
Nice. General Stellar Array. There we go. Now, again, the way it's presented, I don't have anything for that. I'm sorry, man.
What are you going to do with that?
What am I going to do with that? Pretend I never heard it.
You might be a redneck if you know a
Yes.
stellar ray.
Nice. So within, again, the way a lot of these claims, I want to say that it's half the way it's presented and then half the actual data that's presented. And so what I saw was, and it was very sneakily added in, right? There's this screenshot within Zeitgeist. It's not even words being spoken, but it's a screenshot with a caption. And what I saw was the most blatant use, like incorrect use of this so-called theological theory. And it really is just a play on words. So they have this picture of the zodiac chart and 12 different constellations centered around the sun in the center. Mm-hmm. But then right at the bottom of this image, the picture that you're seeing doesn't have the caption, but just picture a caption right at the bottom. They inserted this caption, and it says God's Son, S-U-N. Okay, so it's referring to the star, the sun, right? The solar star. Now, here, that's a good image of the zodiac chart here, and right in the center is the sun. You see the ray, the beams, beaming out of the sun. But the creators of Zeitgeist, they did this play on words, thinking, maybe it's trying to do like some sort of inception, so they say God's Son. Now, if you're a Christian, this immediately starts, ringing God's Son, Jesus, right? The Son of God. But within Zeitgeist, they spell it S-U-N. Yeah. Now, this, what they call a homophone, don't block us, YouTube, homophone, it only works in English. So son, S-U-N, and son, S-O-N. It only works in English. If you look at Hebrew, if you look at Greek, if you look at all the other ancient languages, the words for sun, the star in the sky, and son, a child, a son, they are two very different words,
Right.
not even in the same kind of line of language, right? There's no relation, but it only because it sounds the same,
Right.
they're trying to kind of sneak this past and say God's son, therefore Christianity borrowed from zodiac
Yep.
beliefs, right? And so it's right out the gate, they do this, they play this.
That's interesting.
But then they go further now. So they really try to, kind of put some oomph behind this astrotheology framework. And the idea is, well, let me just jump to the first claim to give you an idea of what they're thinking here. So claim number one here, they mentioned that the star in the east, what you were just talking about,
Yep.
is Sirius.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. The star is Sirius. The brightest star in the night sky, which on December 24th aligns with the three brightest stars in Orion's belt. And probably many of us in here have seen this constellation, Orion's belt, right?
Sure,
It's
yes.
kind of easy to see the three bright stars in alignment.
Yep.
Now, these three stars in Orion's belt are called today what they were called in ancient times, the three kings. Interesting. So that's the claim. That's the claim number one, using this astrotheological framework. So how do we break this down, right? Well, number one, regarding Sirius, this star in the east, the brightest star, that is true. There is the brightest star, and it's called Sirius. Okay, so we're good there. Now, on December 24th, this Sirius star does indeed come above the horizon just after sunset when viewed from Jerusalem. So this researcher I was following, he uses they have apps, programs developed today where you
Starry Night.
There you go. Yeah, you can track, even you plug in a year, you plug in a date, and you will see what the sky would have looked like,
From any place on Earth.
Exactly,
Right.
from any place on earth.
Yep.
And so when you plug this in on December 24th, from a vantage point of Jerusalem, you will see that Sirius does indeed come above the horizon just after sunset. Now, the issue here is that, well, for the Sirius star appearing above the horizon just after sunset, December 24th, it's not significant. It doesn't matter what day. It's not a special day that this is the only time that it appears above the horizon. So you can plug in any day, and it will be above the horizon. So they're just trying to say, well, factually true, but the way they frame it is saying they're trying to tell you it's only on the specific day
Right.
that it appears above the horizon, and it will appear as if the three kings are following this star, right? But that happens every day. They're always in alignment.
Right.
Now, notice what's happening here, though, as well. Remember, they're trying to make the connection that these mystery religions, this was the framework they were operating with. So the stories about their gods and whatnot, and the anthropomorphization, well, I can't believe I said that correctly. Whatever they were doing was all based on the stories that they saw playing out in the stars. So what we see here is the story of the three kings following the star in the east. That's what they're saying that the Jewish people in the New Testament would have copied. Right. They were looking at the stars for these signs. So there was no actual three magi. They weren't actually traveling. It was actually just Jewish people copying the story of what's playing out in the sky.
That's interesting, because then those three stars drop down the gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Yes. Yeah. Haven't you ever had it rain gold?
I have not.
Or at least purple rain?
No.
No, nothing.
Nope.
Don't go there. All right. So, well, that's one claim, right? So they try to use this astrotheological framework. And again, it's heavily dependent upon zodiac and constellations. And you really have to just make assumptions about what these constellations mean. And as we'll see in a little bit, you really kind of just have to make things up as to where they are in the sky and how close they are or whatnot. So let's look at claim number 2. We'll just look at 3, but the second claim here is about the three kings. And again, the brightest star, Sirius. And the claim here was, I quote, "And the three kings and the brightest star, Sirius, all point to the place of the sunrise on December 25th. So we've already debunked that. December 25th is not even important, but they're sticking with it, and they're trying to make it seem as if, well, if you look at the night sky on December 25th, or at least the sunrise, there's going to be a special astro phenomenon that's going to occur, and maybe that's significant. So they say the three Kings star, the Orion's belt, and the brightest star Sirius will all point to the place of the sunrise on December 25th. This is why the three kings follow the star in the east, in order to locate the sunrise, the birth of the sun. Interesting.
I'm convinced.
Are you? Right? Man. English is hard. So the birth of the sun, S-U-N and S-O-N. Get it?
How about that?
Well, wouldn't you know that on December 25th of any year, no matter what year you plug into your Starry Night app, you will see that Orion's belt and Sirius star are not in the sky until after sunset. So on December 25th, you have to wait until the evening time to see them appear in the sky. So this claim is just patently false. It's just not even in the realm of possibly true. This is just not true, right? So I don't know how they think they could get away with it. Maybe they're banking on a certain percentage of people that, and they say, hell, this sounds true.
Oh, yeah.
Therefore it is.
Well, yeah, people pick up arguments against Christianity like dogs pick up fleas. Right?
Wow.
It's just
quote of the night.
It's so, that as soon as you hear something that supports what you already believe, of course, this, gets into that concept of, people sitting in an echo chamber,
Yeah.
But so the concept being that, you already don't want Christianity to be true, and then you hear something like this, it seems legit, you don't have to look into it past that. Boom, you've just got another argument against this belief system that you already don't want to be true. Whereas I would bring the audience back to if you know the scriptures, then you know that what they're saying does not line up with the Matthew's account of the birth of Jesus Christ. And I'll give you the reason why here. In Matthew chapter 2, Matthew tells us that after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews?"
Yeah.
They're telling a story that, on December 25th, the wise men were, the three kings were right there.
Mm-hmm.
The three kings were right there because it's the stars in the sky, that are shining down upon the birth of the baby Jesus, which really is just a plagiarized story from all these other pagan gods, right? But that's not Matthew's account at all. I've jokingly said, from the pulpit, that if you want to have your nativity scene correct and you set one up in your yard, then make sure that the three wise men are in the backyard, because it's going to be some time before they get there. So here's what Matthew says. Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, in you Bethlehem," and then begins to quote this prophecy, right? So the wise men secretly calls Herod secretly calls the wise men, determines from them what time the star appeared, and then he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the young child.
Yes.
And when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also." And so then Matthew 2:9, when they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. Not a baby at this point. Now we've got a little toddler.
Yeah.
And with that, you even see Herod then attempting to destroy the baby Jesus, and the wise men are wise enough to know not to go back. They're clued into this fact, so they go back a different way. But in Matthew 2:16, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, he was exceedingly angry. He sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts from 2 years old and under. Why 2 years old?
Because it's been some time.
Because it had already been at least that amount of time, right? So, so the idea that the three kings, these three stars in the sky, are there at the moment of the birth of Jesus Christ does not line up with the biblical story. Bam.
Bam. You did it.
I'm going to tell Stellar Ray to keep his trap shut.
You hear that, Stella? Stella! Yeah, and this is what, you know, and you've probably seen this as well. So we do outreach there on the UT campus, UT Austin campus. And more times often than not, when somebody is willing to go toe-to-toe and debate the scriptures and certain stories, right? What I find more often than not is that they've never actually read the account. Right. That what they're actually retelling us is a very simplistic 30,000-foot bullet point cliff note view of the story. And then when we there's a lot. You
had guns, planes, and cliffs.
Yes. all of it. It's so simplistic that, and then you go and read the account to them, and it's kind of like, oh, you know, this is the first time I'm hearing this, you know?
Right.
So it's one of those things where a lot of the times you just kind of have to pull your Bible out and say, you want to read the actual story or the actual account? And a lot of times that might just do the trick, you know? Like you're giving them new information at that point.
Right. Yeah, and it really comes back to, you know, when I have people, you know, that ask me about, you know, what are the best apologetic books and whatnot. It's like, well, know the Bible first, you know, like I love apologetic books and I love studying arguments and all that is great, but you have to know the Bible. You have to know what the Bible actually says. It comes back to the concept of if you want to know, if you want to be able to spot counterfeit money, you have to know what real money looks like.
Yeah.
If you know real money, then you'll be able to spot any counterfeit, however the counterfeit appears.
Yeah, I remember around this time, like Religulous came out and Zeitgeist. Around that time also, Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, came out.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember me not being afraid, but more like I wanted to be cautious before I actually picked up the book and read it because, you know, I heard it was doing numbers, you know, like
smoking hot.
Yeah, it was taking people
faith.
down. Yeah. But I just remember making a conscious decision of like, you know what, I want to be grounded in theology first. I want to know the Bible, and then I will feel confident enough to start looking at these, anti-theistic pieces of literature or whatever, right?
Sure.
And that was a decision I made. But and you know, to this day, I stand by it. You know, I will guide people and tell them the same thing you just said. Make sure you know your Bible as a Christian. Don't try, well, I guess it depends, but I would generally say don't try to go and, you know, be like a Leroy Jenkins and just go storming the castle right away. Take some time, develop your relationship with your Creator, with your Savior, and with His commandments and His teachings, and build up that knowledge. And then you can go and study to show thyself approved, right?
Yep.
So
totally
good,
agree.
Yeah, good stuff there. I'm going to throw one more claim out there because this is actually an interesting one. So this is actually not Christmas, but it's talking about looking forward to Easter, so the resurrection. And again, astrotheology here tells us that during this 3-day pause. So
talking about when Jesus was
Jesus is in the tomb.
He's in the tomb.
Yeah. And apparently in the sky, you will see this phenomenon such that certain stars will reach their lowest point, or at least I think it's the sun. Yeah, the sun will reach its lowest point on the horizon and kind of hover there for 3 days.
Spring equinox.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the sun will reside in the vicinity of the Southern Cross or Crux constellation. So there is a constellation called Crux.
Yeah.
And, well, when you plug in your handy-dandy in Starry Nights and see, where is this Crux constellation in relation to the sun's orbit, or rather the sun's tracking in the sky, rather. Almost made a flat earther out of me. Look at this.
Wow.
Woo. Well, what you notice there is that, so in this image, at least on both images on the left one is taken from 2008 BC, and then also the right one is actually 2008 AD, or Common Era. But that you'll notice a green line, if you can make it out on the left. It's kind of a curve, an elliptical curve there. That is the track of the sun in the sky. That's where it will be showing up. And towards the bottom right, you will see a crux constellation. So if you start kind of towards the right on the bottom and you start tracking up, you'll see a little tiny cross, and it's kind of surrounded by a rectangle around it. If you might see that. Point is, that cross is nowhere near where the sun's going to be. I mean, on this picture, you say like a couple of inches, but when you're talking about the sky, I mean, this is not in the vicinity. And so maybe they get away with that. Well, we didn't say how, close it is, but in any normal understanding of the term vicinity, this is not in the vicinity, right?
It's like when you call 911 here in Austin and ask if there are police that can come to your emergency, and they tell you that they're in the vicinity. It means they'll be there in about an hour or two.
Be prepared to defend yourself. Well,
I love our police.
Yes.
I just wish they had their full funding.
Yeah. So,
should people who voted against Prop A be able to call the police?
Hey.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Hey. I've heard the argument on the other side regarding vaccines of if people refuse to protect themselves against COVID, should they receive medical care? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Sword strikes both ways.
It does.
But
I mean, I'd rather not be put on a ventilator.
Yes. Very nice. Yeah. One day this will all be over.
One day.
Yeah.
One day we'll be in heaven.
One more
look
day.
Back and just laugh.
One day more. Anyways. All right. So that, in a nutshell, folks, is Zeitgeist. And ancient pagan mystery religions and astrotheology, as it were. Honestly, we could have talked about a whole lot more, a lot more of those claims about having 12 followers and all this kind of stuff.
But why?
This was enough. This was sufficient.
I think E.O. James does a good job just kind of putting this whole thing to bed. He says there is no valid, consider that, there is no valid comparison between the synoptic story of Jesus of Nazareth and the mythological accounts of the mystery divinities of Eleusis, Thrace, Phrygia, or Egypt. Similarly, the belief in the resurrection of Christ is poles removed from the resuscitation of Osiris, Dionysus, or Attis in an annual ritual based on primitive conceptions of mummifications and the renewal of the new life in the spring. Bam.
Yeah.
I mean,
takedown.
I just don't even, what do you say to that?
Well, one could say, well, that's just your opinion.
True. That's the opinion of a scholar.
Yes.
Right? There's a great article by John Ankerberg who just lists just takedown after takedown.
John Ankerberg, takedowns, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Meek and mild John Ankerberg?
Well, he does it in a very polite way as he types.
With his
he types lightly.
With his shimmery hair.
Yes. The silver fox. So
he is, yeah.
So he quotes C.S. Lewis from his book Miracles. And this is what Lewis says about it. Yahweh is clearly not a nature God. He does not die and come to life each year as a true corn king should.
Nice.
I love that. He is not the soul of nature nor any part of nature. He inhabits eternity. He dwells in the high and holy place. Heaven is his throne, not his vehicle. Earth is his footstool, not his vesture. One day he will dismantle both and make a new heaven and earth. He is not to be identified even with the divine spark in man. He is God and not man. His thoughts are not our thoughts. Mm-hmm. Incredible.
Yeah, and if I remember, I think it was in God in the Dock where C.S. Lewis also talks about how Christianity is the true myth. And, even as recent as C.S. Lewis's day, myth and mythology had a very different meaning. They were really just about these ancient stories, not necessarily false, but he talks about how Christianity comes along in this story about Jesus and redemption and the resurrection. It is a myth, but he calls it the true myth. It is the one true myth. And so the one that has backing, the one that has that corresponds to reality, right? And so I've always appreciated that about what C.S. Lewis has to say about the story of Christianity.
Yep.
And I got to thinking also how there's maybe a little bit of parallel between what we're talking about tonight and then kind of what we were talking about last month. When I was talking about how these theories that try to prove too much, and maybe just kind of offhand we can talk a little bit more about how does one kind of get wrapped into these ways of thinking, these obviously false beliefs, but yet they still find their way. They're just permeating throughout culture, kind of like underneath the ground.
Right.
And they kind of grab a little bit here, a little bit there, but then before you know it, it kind of grows. And then before you know it, you might be surprised. So if you're not prepared, you might be caught off guard, right? But I've always wondered, how does one gravitate to these kinds of theories and really hold on to them and actually believe them, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on just in your experience, the people that you've spoken to and throughout the years that have bought into some of these lines of thinking, and just what have you noticed about? Are there underlying reasons? Is there a pattern as to what is the type of person that might believe this? Or
Well, I think that we tend to think that someone else is a greater expert than ourselves, so that when somebody speaks as an expert, we tend to pay attention. I could list a whole number of health officials right now that are proving my point. But so when you have questions, let's say you have questions about something that you've read in the Bible, you've come across several passages. It's caused you to question something that you were taught to believe, but you never really had a grounded foundational belief from the scriptures. It's just something that your parents taught you, or you heard it in Sunday school, or you heard it at church. But then you come across a passage of scripture that seems to be in conflict with that belief, and then you hear someone else make a comment that kind of satisfies that question mark that you have. And it's, it almost soothes the soul, if you will. There's a bit of almost like that makes sense when you hear it. And then you don't go, you make the same mistake that you made when you had the first question in the first place, right? So when you read the scripture and it brings up the question, and then you allow that question to just, take root in your mind, and then someone else comes along and offers an answer to that question that you also don't research, you just incorporate that into your belief system as easy as that. And I think that happens not even with just the Christian faith, but in many different belief systems. I think evolution, atheism. You could run down the list of different belief systems, different isms, and you see the same phenomena happening where people have a question mark about something, and then someone just offers up, in an authoritative way, something that answers that question that they had, and they just accept it. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the same thing where, like you mentioned, even in what we're going on with COVID and whatnot, how there are a lot of appeals to authority, just kind of blanketly, right? Just like CDC said it, therefore,
right.
I believe it. There's an inherent trust, which is not bad all the time, right? Like there are authorities, there's experts for a reason. But I think it is wise to have a healthy sort of skepticism, right? Especially when you hear things that, like I mentioned, with this and then the flat Earth stuff, it sounds like it's trying to prove too much. Everything is borrowed, every single detail, right? I'll look into it, but I'm gonna tell you there's a little bit of skepticism there, right? To say the least. So, but yeah, a lot of the times I do see like a blanket trust in the so-called experts, and just because they have a title behind their name, as we mentioned, like a Richard Carrier, who is an actual scholar and is in the right field to do this stuff. Oh man, people latch on to him. But then you have another scholar who's not even a friend of Christianity, Bart Ehrman, and he writes a book.
Yeah.
Did Jesus exist? And he totally takes him down. Well, there you let it play out. Let's see who has the best evidence at the end of the day. But we have to be willing to put forth that effort. If not just for ourselves. Just to at least, again, examine our faith to make sure, hey, is what I believe actually true? I mean, don't we all want to believe in a lot of things that are true, right? Why would I want to believe in something that I've been told is false, and then I go and look and it's actually false? What does that benefit me? In fact, that's just going to hurt me down the road, right? But yeah, and I did want to touch on how you see that if within the walls of a church, kids that will go to Sunday school class and be taught a story, but then that teaching is not reinforced at home. It's almost like church these days is turning into kind of like a daycare, an hour and a half daycare,
Yeah.
And nothing's being reinforced throughout the week. And what is being reinforced when children are at school or just taking part in culture, right, going out with different spheres of influence there, they're reinforced with cultural messages that are ungodly.
Right.
And no wonder why we keep hearing the statistics about how so many kids, the majority of them are leaving the faith for things that sound true in culture,
Right.
like this new wokeism, critical race theory, transgender movement, that kind of stuff. And they hear people like Ibram X. Kendi, he has speaking gigs and sounds true, appeals to your emotions, and then they just go right for it. They abandon everything that they've been taught. They've been taught things, but it's never been grounded. It's never been part of their foundation. It's never been a cornerstone, right? So yeah, it's a sad thing to see. But hopefully that's what we're here to do with Studio 118 is have these tough conversations and really encourage the audience to, we're just scratching the surface here. Go home, or after we're done here, go and do the hard work of now doing some more research and finding out for yourself.
And that really is, something that I value, a healthy skepticism, so that when I do come across something like a Religulous or a Zeitgeist documentary or you name it. I mean, tonight we're talking about Zeitgeist and Religulous and these, arguments about pagan origins of Christianity and is there a connection, and this is just one area where when I came across this stuff back in 2007 and whatnot, it was just like, okay, time to go do some research, time to go and investigate this. It wasn't like, oh, they're saying it, they sound smart, they seem to have scholarship backing them up, therefore I'll just accept it. No. I immediately went and started investigating these claims and immediately found that, that a lot of the claims that they're making, well, there's no source material until after the Christian faith.
Yeah.
So you don't, not until after you have the New Testament written and copied, and passed around the church, not until after the New Testament books are already in circulation do you find source materials for many of the claims that they're making in Zeitgeist and Religulous and in the Da Vinci Code, right?
Yeah.
So then who's borrowing from whom? Because the argument is that, oh, well, Christianity borrowed these stories from these people. Well, where there are actual appearances of a parallel or similarities, in those actual cases, what you have is source material for the mystery religion coming after the fact.
Yep.
And is it then possible that, well, these guys borrowed from Christianity? And it seems kind of likely.
Yep. That's true. Yeah, with you're talking about the Da Vinci Code with the Gnostic Gospels, Gospel of Thomas, and all this. Yeah, all these things came after the New Testament was in circulation. That's right.
And the I forget the guy's name, but he was a Gnostic that took a first stab at a canonization of the New Testament. I always forget the guy's name.
Yeah.
But so the person who,
Muratorian fragment. I don't know.
Anyway, so this individual set out to canonize the New Testament.
Yep.
And when you look at his canon, it's only New Testament books with the exclusion of a few, which were clearly anti-Gnosticism. Mm-hmm. And so, this individual that attempted a first canon of the New Testament letters and Gospels only used what we already recognize as New Testament books, with the exception of a few that he found to be in conflict with his Gnostic belief system, like 1 John.
Yep.
So now, if the Gnostic Gospels were available to him at that period of time, well, you better believe that he would have incorporated those into his canon. But he didn't. He didn't incorporate not the Gospel of Mary, not the Gospel of Truth, not the Gospel of Thomas, not a single one of them. He didn't use not one of those Gnostic Gospels. Why?
Yeah.
They weren't written yet.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't available to him, or else he would have used them.
Yeah.
So these Gnostic beliefs, which tie into these mystery religions and whatnot, and kind of present us with a mixture of mystery religion, nature, religion and Christianity. Those books didn't even exist until much later. So, but what we do find is in the scriptures, Peter actually tells us that he's not following cunningly devised fables. It's in 2 Peter 1 verse 16. He says, "We did not follow cunningly devised fables when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but were eyewitnesses." That's what he says. We were eyewitnesses of his majesty.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Here's Peter, who is with Jesus from the beginning of his earthly ministry until the day of Christ's ascension into heaven. Peter's there pretty much the whole time. He ducked out there at the cross.
About a night or two, yeah.
But throughout the entirety of Christ's earthly ministry, Peter was right there.
Yeah.
And he says, we did not follow cunningly devised fables. We did not pull from mystery religions.
Yeah.
We did not get influence from previous pagan gods.
Yeah. And I think this is a good way to kind of round out our discussion, right, about how you compare what the Zeitgeist is pushing forth, right, about that there are these beliefs that are really just solely based on astronomical phenomena going on, but they're not really grounded in any real history. It's really just people trying to understand nature, and there's that assumption that anything that is ancient, right, anything that was long ago, people were just kind of like, I don't know how to operate in the world and look to the stars. And well, people did look to the stars, but you look at Christianity and just one verse that you read there, you see people who were very interested in making sure that what they believe is true. They had a very vested interest in making sure that the things they talked about actually happened, right? So is there another verse that you can point us to that really gives us a glimpse as to the motivation that these authors were looking for?
Well, I always love, going back to 1 John, I always love just how definitive he is as he insists upon his status as an eyewitness. It's 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, where he says, "That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled concerning the word of life. The life was manifested, and we have seen and bear witness and declare to you that eternal life which was with the Father and was manifested to us. That which we have seen and heard we declare to you, that you may also have fellowship with us, and truly our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. So, when the first time I read this, as a new believer, I was just kind of like, it's so incredible when I consider, he's saying, hey, we heard him. Mm-hmm. We didn't just hear him. We saw him with our eyes, and we looked upon him, intently studied him, and our hands have handled concerning the word of life. And so one of the reasons why this epistle was left out of that first Gnostic version of the New Testament is because, well, they don't like all of this. They don't like a material Christ who who is literally physically there and not just pretending to be. Yeah. Right. But John here is just assuring his audience that, listen, we're not making up stories about sun gods, who are born, under Orion's belt, the three kings, and this isn't mythology. Yeah. This is real life stuff that he's talking about. And in 1 Corinthians, 15, Paul even tells us that, there were over 600 eyewitnesses, many who were still alive at the point in time he was writing 1 Corinthians, 15. Yeah. So there is no shortage of eyewitness testimony regarding the birth, the life, the death, the burial, and the resurrection and ascension of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and we talked in depth about this kind of evidence, about the reliability in a past episode. I think it was called The Reliability of the New Testament. So again, if you want to jump on our Studio 118 YouTube channel, you can check that past episode out. But again, we're just trying to really compare and contrast here the nature of the scriptures, the Bible, and the stories within them. Compare and contrast that to what Zeitgeist is trying to tell us the Bible stories are based on. It's not fairy tale, it's not mythology, it's not astrotheology, it's history, historical figures, blood and flesh. And one of the passages that I love is in Luke, his opening passage here.
So good.
From his writing. And so in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, the first 4 verses read as such: "Inasmuch as many have taken in hand to set in order a narrative of those things which have been fulfilled among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write to you an orderly account, most excellent Theophilus, that you may know the certainty of those things in which you were instructed." So does that sound like Once Upon a Time, or people deriving from almonds and severed private parts? This does not ring like that. This is history.
You're bringing us back.
Yeah,
man.
Here we go. Had to. Now, Luke is telling us not only were there already in circulation Gospels, and he's saying, look, I know that these Gospels are already circulating, but I wanted to put them into an orderly account. And so the idea was there that I kind of want to put these in some sort of form that is easier to understand for his certain audience. But he's telling us that he went and interviewed eyewitnesses,
right.
People who actually saw the things and experienced the miracles, experienced the teachings, and they heard and saw Jesus and the disciples and everything that was going on. That is the antithesis of what Zeitgeist is trying to tell us what's going on.
Exactly.
But this is in the Bible. And all throughout, what I've noticed is that I picked here an Old Testament passage, but there's so many other passages I could have gone with, but this one is just one example. So in 2 Kings, and really all of 2 Kings, it kind of reads like this. Notice the details here. 2 Kings 25:27 reads, "Now it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month, that Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, released Jehoiachin, king of Judah, from prison." I mean, it's telling you really the exact date of when these events are occurring.
Right.
And that is really throughout the entire Old Testament, you read just passages like that. It's telling you exactly when it happened. Even back then in the Old Testament, the authors were concerned and they were interested in telling truth. And they were interested in really telling their audience, hey, these things actually happen and you can verify for yourself.
Right.
So I love that.
Yes, the Bible is extremely testable, and then supported by archaeological discovery, 100% of the time. We haven't yet discovered one piece of one. There's not one spade stuck in the ground that has ever unearthed a piece of archaeology that controverts what the Bible says.
Yeah. People have tried.
Oh yeah,
But they wound up
no doubt.
changing their minds.
Yeah, was it F.F. Bruce? Wasn't he an archaeologist?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
That set out to disprove it, and based on the evidence, came to the conclusion that archaeology fully supports the Bible, right? So in the areas that can be tested, right? So if you have a scripture that is supported 100% of the time with the archaeology, well, then it actually places the time period. It actually places the writing in the time period.
Yeah.
Because if you're writing 100 years or 1,000 years later, you're not going to be dialed into the specific archaeology.
Yeah.
And even the names of, you even find in the scriptures like pet names of people being used, that wasn't agreed upon by scholars until some piece of archaeology unearthed and oh yeah, that name was used. Or there's one point in the book of Acts where Paul crosses over a border that literally existed for 2 years during that time period that he was traveling in, and then was long forgotten about.
Yeah.
And scholars would point at this border that he says he crossed, and they'd be like, this border doesn't exist, that's ridiculous.
Dumb Paul.
And then archaeology unearths the fact that there was a border for 2 years in this area that nobody knew about, years later, except what Paul said was true, and archaeology backed it up.
And you see those mistakes happening with like the Gnostic Gospels, like you're saying, that come after, but try to tie. They're trying to say that, oh, these were actual disciples that wrote these Gnostic Gospels, but they're making basic mistakes like what vegetation was present in that area that they're talking about. They're identifying trees even, right? Yeah. This happens with Islam, where the beliefs that were around the time were already corrupted Christian beliefs, but Muhammad is believing that this is actual Christianity. Right. So he's not even talking about true Christianity at that point, but he's claiming to play it off as if it is, right?
Yep.
So yeah, stuff like that. And all this goes to show is that, yes, the Bible and all the accounts within them, they're history. Now, obviously, you have your poetic books and whatnot, but the accounts that are meant to read as history, they are historical, and they do have many, many archaeological finds. I think you can just look up like biblicalarchaeology.org or something like that, and every year they will put like top 10 archaeological finds that support the Bible, and there's plenty of them.
And they keep finding more and more.
Yeah. So all this to say, guys, just to round up, before we get into our Q&A, I want to have some time for that, is what have we gone through, right? We started off with this idea that, granted, it is kind of fringe, but you may hear about it from your friends and relatives this Christmas season, that the story of Christianity, the story that of Jesus' birth, even life and death and resurrection, they were all borrowed or copied from pagan, ancient, mystery, religious beliefs that have stemmed back thousands of years, and they were really just using signs in the stars and constellations and using the zodiac symbols to really tell a story, and they have just been evolved as time goes on. And when it came to Christianity, they just found it easy enough to come up with a savior story, a Messiah story of their own using these pagan beliefs. But as we showed, there's no reasoning that undergirds Zeitgeist claims. You can go and look for yourself. Plenty of research has been done over the years. Like I said, this movie has been in existence since 2007, and plenty of people have debunked all these claims. And so hopefully we've given you a good amount of information and ammunition. So again, just carry that forward as you head into the holidays. Do your research. Again, get grounded in theology. That way you're able to detect the counterfeit. And if you're a skeptic watching this show, we encourage you to reconsider any claims that you might have about the truth or lack thereof about Christianity and the Bible and whatnot. And so we invite you to actually read the scriptures for yourself and tell us. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us, is this true? Is this actually happening? What about it sounds like a fairy tale? And we can have a discussion there. But yeah, that is our presentation for you guys on the Zeitgeist, and we want to lead into our Q&A session. Before that, just want to give a little kind of roundabout about our information about what we're doing here. We're Studio 118, broadcasting from Calvary South Austin here in Austin, Texas, and we're about to get into our Q&A portion of the discussion. So if you're on YouTube, jump on that live chat and submit your questions. We got a few queued up here. And we'd love to hear from you. If you're on Austin Cable Access Channel 11, you can call in your question, 512-576-5433. And again, here at Calvary South Austin, we're a church in South Austin, and we'd love for you to join us. We meet corporately on Sunday mornings, 9:15 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. Bunjee here is our pastor, and currently on Wednesday evenings, we have at 7 p.m., we're going through a special series about the Patriot pastors and how their teachings influenced a bunch of ideas leading up to the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Revolutionary War. Really good series, and we invite you to join us for that. Let's get into our Q&A discussion, Bunjee. We got a few questions. Let me tee them up for you. And let's see what kind of trouble we can get in here. First one's right out the gate. Oh, actually, oh no, I'll go here. What do you think the motivation of the Zeitgeist producer is? What do I think? I mean, I can only speculate, but
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Like I said, and keep in mind that this movie is broken up into 3 parts. So this isn't even the half of it, right? This is one part of a broader, I don't know what they're getting at, but it was this ancient pagan mystery religions, and then they get into 9/11, and then they get into the banking system, right? So it's kind of all over the place.
There is a belief that every sector of society is under Illuminati control.
I haven't heard that one in a while.
And you didn't play the 90s Illuminati game, did you?
No.
But so I can't help but to wonder if maybe they're attempting to, go in and expose every sector for its corruption or for, the secrets that they're maybe hiding, or
Sure.
I could imagine that maybe the producer has some altruistic goal to expose corruption and expose lies and that sort of thing. So maybe it's just a complete anti-Illuminati kind of approach. And I say that considering a 9/11 video, a banking video, and then sort of an attack on the Christian faith, then which, probably at the end of the day, he's a communist.
Yeah,
but I don't.
Commie. Last name Marx. Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get in, I can't speculate. I mean, if I were super charitable, I was like, this guy actually believes what he's throwing out. But then you would have to say, when you're presented now with refutation of whatever you're throwing out there, wouldn't you want to change your mind? So I don't know. The fact that they stick to it and, they even double down and try to defend their claims and stuff like that, it's hard to tell. But
yeah, some people just want to watch the world burn.
That's true also. Yeah. It's true also.
So I don't know. I have no idea, like the what motivates people to do what they do question. I tend to steer clear of, because maybe it's altruistic, maybe it's completely demonic. I I don't know.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't provide any more clarity there.
Yeah.
Not all knowing here. Well, let's see. How would an unbeliever or non-believer know that Jesus' story is this true source material and not these other religions?
Did Jeremy write this?
Hey Siri. Nice. Got me. I did not understand. Sorry.
Who is Mr. Science?
Nice. I can't do the impression. Anyways, well, how would an unbeliever know that this true source material, not other religions? I would want to challenge them to investigate the actual source material if they could, right? Or if you know that you can help guide them through kind of some of the verses that we just went over, showing that the Bible is a historical compilation, right? Showing that the Gospels can't be discounted just at face value. You have to actually read through them and wrestle with them and test them, right?
Yeah. And I would take this little bit a different approach at answering the question: how would an unbeliever or non-believer know that Jesus' story is this true source material and not these other religions? And to the person asking the question and to everyone else in the audience that's a believer, the answer is you. It's your job, Christian. It's my job. It's our job to help unbelievers or non-believers to know that the story of Jesus is true, and that the Bible is the true source material for the gospel message. That's our responsibility. Now, there's also an aspect where God has placed within every person innate information that lines up with the truth when they hear it, right? So Paul tells us that the law of God has been written upon our hearts, and that the ways that we can know who God is manifest within us, for God has shown it to us. So that the unbeliever is without excuse, because what Paul says in Romans 1 is that they're suppressing the truth in their unrighteousness. But with that, I would just point out that when it comes down to how do the unbelievers around us know that Jesus is the Savior and that the Bible is the true source of information about this, well, that's our job. That's what Christians have been called to do as we go out and accomplish the Great Commission, which begins with the sharing of the gospel message, leading people to Christ, and then once they're believers, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and then discipling them by teaching them all the things that the Lord has instructed us with.
Yeah, very good. I agree wholeheartedly that it's high time, especially in this day and age where there's so much going on in culture and so many ways to just be pulled this way and that, to and fro, as it were, right? By every wind of doctrine, that we definitely have to be doing our part to make sure that we know why we believe, not just what we believe.
Yep.
Good stuff. Here's a good question that may lead into a new episode, but let's see. What argument would you provide for those witnessing to those who believe in New Ageism, astrology, crystals, that kind of stuff? Have you ever dealt with anybody who is in that kind of...
Oh, sure, yeah. We used to go to the Whole Life Expo here in Austin, and we would do outreach outside. Sometimes we would go ahead and purchase a booth on the inside and give out living water.
Nice.
And yeah, so I'm a fairly, I guess I would just say well-versed in New Age, belief system.
Did you become all things to all people and you started smelling like patchouli? And
I did. No, I could never actually put patchouli on me, nor would I be around someone with it on them. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's your kryptonite.
No, I've had a lot of friends who would douse themselves in patchouli thinking that it covered their body odor, and no, it creates something new altogether.
Yes.
That is just offensive. But sorry if you like patchouli, but
yeah. Sorry, not sorry.
Amber is a much better way to go. So
nice.
But so yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of New Age friends. I remember when I first moved to Austin, I was invited to be a part of some, like backyard meditation session or something, and it was full-on cult. It was just this crazy New Age guy that was just teaching cultic things that were New Agey and whatnot. But so yeah, he had his crystals and all that kind of stuff.
Where would you start? Would you start, hey, these crystals are false, or how do you kind of break down those barriers?
Yeah, well, I think at the outset, it is a matter of listening to someone, but because to say that I'm familiar with New Age, beliefs is not to say that I know what every New Ager believes.
Right.
And it's so important for us to recognize that, if you go in half-cocked with, your arguments against whatever New Age doctrine that you've been studying, and you think this person believes it, and you start arguing against it, and it's not something they've embraced, it just becomes an argument about the argument rather than actually reaching the individual standing in front of you.
Yeah.
So, what argument would I provide to those who believe in New Age astrology or crystals? Kind of depends on, what they would do with a question like, if you were to die today and you were to stand before God, and he asked you, why should I let you into heaven? What would you say to God? What would you say to him? And to see where they go from there. They might, dismiss the concept of God, or they might talk about, the Gaia or the Force or what have you. And I would just kind of gauge the response, and then, prayerfully leaning on the Holy Spirit, then begin to address their response, and then bringing them to the knowledge of the truth.
Yeah, I would say you're perhaps even closer than you think you are, because they're already religious or spiritual, as it were, right? And so they're open to at least that supernatural, perhaps.
And most New Agers believe that Jesus is an ascended master. So you've already got that in. Now that's a different Jesus, of course. But, there is some level of respect in the minds of most New Agers for Jesus as an ascended master, that he's one of many great prophets. And so that might be a good way to start, is just, well, what do you believe about Jesus? And I believe in Jesus. Do you believe in Jesus? And if so, what do you believe about Jesus? And then in that response, begin to address, the points that they make.
Yeah. So the bullhorn sandwich board stuff doesn't work? No.
No, I think that's great for, a football game or something, but not so much for evangelism.
Good. Well, thanks for that answer. I think that's great, and perhaps, like I said, that's probably an episode down the road.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so... Well, that about does it for us here at Studio 118. Thank you for all those good questions. Again, if you're on that live chat and you got more questions for us, our people will still be standing by for just a tiny bit. But if you have other questions you want to ask, again, feel free to call that number, 512-576-5433. And thank you for joining us on this great Christmas special episode of Studio 118. We will see you next year. Again, I'm Reuben. This is Bunjee. We will see you later.
Merry Christmas.